I wanna say it's almost hypocritical that women the beating the snot out of each other, it needs to stop. It's not a good image.
Hmm.
I don't I can't condone the sport anymore.
She's an undefeated MMA champion and was one of the first women to enter the sport. She's also a motivational speaker, media personality, model, fashion influencer, and designer. She really does it all. Please welcome Stephanie Mankin to the podcast. Sorry about that. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking a little bit about, your MMA career, the time you spend fighting, all that. So, first question, I just have to get into it. How did you sort of discover your love for MMA, or what made you want to become an MMA fighter?
It's a crazy simple answer. It was anger management. You know how
Yeah.
you gotta find something, the parent has to find something to, like, keep the child.
Yeah, yeah, under control.
Exactly. And then it
Hmm.
just took over.
Yeah. And so, like, how did it sort of transition from, this is, what my parents had me do for anger management to wanting to do it as a career, wanting to become a pro, like, MMA fighter? What was that sort of transition like?
So, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would have these titles. It was supposed to be like lawyer, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So when I first entered, I thought, okay, let's roll with it. And before I knew it, it was like home. The people I was with, my mentors, it just it centered me. As bizarre as that sounds for that sport, it centered me and it did
Yeah.
its job.
And so, once like pro MMA fighter was the goal and was the career, what sort of, I guess, went behind making that your goal? What steps did you take to achieve that goal? What did that process look like?
It was wild because I was scouted to go pro. And once I hit pro, I didn't really realize the impact and nature of what was going on
Yeah.
because men dominated the sport. So you didn't see us, like, because they didn't wanna know from us. But I gained this platform, and I slowly started to realize, like, wow, I now have a voice for women and can speak, and I knocked the door down.
You sort of mentioned it there. It was and still is a very male dominated sport. Now women are definitely getting more attention, but still not nearly as much as the men. When you first came in, and that was sort of to the extremes, like it was almost only men and women were getting very little attention. What was that like, and did that sort of make you think about choosing another career, not being an MMA fighter anymore?
No, I never thought twice about what I was doing. If anything, it put a fire even more so in me to fight. Like, I remember the days my mentors were going after Dana White, and Dana White would repeatedly say, "There will never be a woman in the cage." And, to me, that was like, come on, dude, let's do this. I'll get in the cage with you.
Yeah. And
So
yeah. So now like that women are sort of more highlighted in the sport. I mean, what do you think that's doing for, the fighters themselves, the sport as a whole? What impact do you think new like women fighters are having for the sport?
unfortunately, I think it was kind of a wave, and it's the women are still riding a wave. Like the originals being myself and Gina and like that crew. And then you had the wave of Rhonda, who was just handed a belt. And we all just went, what is this? And now you see these women fighting with purity in their hearts for a sport they love, and they're not being treated equally. There's
Mhm.
still anti feminism in the sport.
Do you think that comes from a place of maybe just uh, thinking or assuming that, female athletes aren't as physically capable as male athletes? What do you think is sort of the motivation behind not giving women an equal platform to men.
I feel a woman can do anything a man can do because I
Mm,
did it.
yeah,
Like, I still feel, unfortunately, that there's a bias towards women in this sport in particular. Why? Yeah, unfortunately, men have egos
yeah,
and they have something to prove a lot of the time. And they don't feel that women can be, big and strong and tough, or they don't like it. I've experienced it firsthand. But I would tell every woman, just keep fighting.
yeah. And, you obviously participated in the sport to the highest degree, became one of the best in your field. Did that also become just like a love for just watching the sport, watching other fighters?
So back in the day, yeah, I would absolutely be at the sports bar trying to watch a fight, like with my friends circled around me so no one could see me.
Mhm,
As I've grown, I want to say it's almost hypocritical that women, the beating the snot out of each other, it needs to stop. It's not a good image.
mhm,
I don't, I can't condone the sport anymore.
mhm. So
It's
what,
hard for me.
yeah, what do you think changed about your view that went from sort of fighting for yourself and for just women in general to have a platform in the sport to now not feeling as proud of, the sport and sort of not almost not wanting, women to be involved with the sport.
I mean, I sat one night and I was watching it as an older version of me being older.
Yeah,
And I found myself, I couldn't grasp, I couldn't get myself into it. I found myself trying not to look. It was it was bullying. I hate to use that word on something that I did, but it's a harsh reality. Two
yeah,
locked people in a cage, even two women. How do you explain that to a child or anyone and say, this is okay, when women are supposed to be uplifting each other and doing things of that nature now?
mhm. And so do you think that is, you know, your view towards the women, or do you also, share some of those views towards the men fighting in MMA as well?
With the men, it's gotten so out of control that it's just barbaric. They
Mhm.
will let anybody fight. I know it sounds terrible, but they're using people to just be broken. And if you don't know what you're doing, look, people are walking out with cracked skulls. Like, you guys don't get to know what's behind the scenes and the injuries and all that insanity.
Yeah.
It's scary.
We hear about a fight and we see the fight, and then a couple months after that, we see the same fighter in peak condition, ready for another fight in that, but we don't see that months long, sometimes longer recovery process of them having to, get back into shape from being, like you said, just broken.
I mean, perfect example was Conor McGregor
Yeah,
in the cage when his ankle snapped. We're all human. We all break.
yeah, and so, like, I mean, I'm sure you sort of almost had to do this while fighting, but even now, you're a very confident person. You have a lot of self-confidence. Where does that come from? And what advice would you give to someone watching this who wants to have that sort of confidence in themselves?
I was very fortunate in the fact that my parents brought me up to be a confident, independent female. Um, I don't understand why people feel they need to hold back their talents, their skills. There's no shame in being who you are and being proud and confident. I mean, be you, do you. Stop looking at social media. I know that's a big word nowadays,
Yeah,
but some of the people that the regular society is emulating are not the proper examples. It's showing
yeah,
them to be someone else rather than being true to themselves.
yeah.
And there goes the confidence.
Have you, I guess, have you sort of taken those steps for yourself to stop using social media? And if so, when did you implement that? When did you sort of stop using social media?
So I did pull the plug on social media a while back, aside from like one private one, but recently it has gone back up. Um, I put myself in this position indirectly. So I have to take the good with the bad. And social media is a part.
Yeah.
So I have to deal with my repercussions.
Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything. Everything you could imagine, it's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. It's super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible, I'm talking any platform you can think of, get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program. And, a lot of people sort of see social media as maybe like a way to connect, a way to share what's going on with them. For you now, feeling the way you do you sort of almost see it as like work, or like, I guess, kind of like you said, like part of the job to use social media?
I have no problem using my social media for what I achieved and what I can achieve with the voice that I have for it now. I do have a problem when people overstep boundaries. You have to have thick skin, and I know there are going to be haters and the nasty comments, and that's all good. I take it with a grain of salt. But when things are sent to me that are of inappropriate nature, that's when I draw the line.
Yeah. And, I think that's sort of a big topic nowadays. Like, sending stuff like that, having, someone who built their career on the internet or something like that is now getting personal information, or, where they live put out on the internet. And sort of the same thing that built them up and gave them a career is now sort of, you know, haunting them or ruining their life, and they're forced to, move places, forced to take a break from the thing they may love doing, all just because of that.
It's scary.
Do you see any like possible ways to sort of help reduce or stop that sort of behavior, or do you think it's just something that we have to accept comes with the internet?
I don't like the term like to accept, because I always
Yeah,
believe you can change things. But social media, just any internet type platform, even Ancestry, they're just so open that it's the wild, wild west. There's no
yeah.
regulation.
Now, sort of transitioning back to your fighting career, back to like those days that you were fighting, did you ever experience fear during a fight? And I mean, if you did, how did you sort of deal with that in the moment?
That was the craziest part of it all. I never second guessed myself walking into a fight, because I knew I was trained properly. And again, the confidence. You go into a zone and you do what you got to do. It's a job.
Yeah.
But at the
And
end, I mean, whoa.
yeah. And I'm sure to get that good training, to be in such a position that you felt that confident, you had to keep like a very strong regimen to get ready for a fight. And I know a lot of just normal people, you know, have trouble getting motivated to get in shape, or maybe they do it for a bit and then sort of lose the habit. How can someone start to get in shape and then keep that habit and keep themselves motivated?
It's all in your mind. If you put your mind to something, you can achieve anything. But I mean, people think, fighters, any athlete, people just wake up and we just do our thing and we don't suffer and struggle. Look, there are days the alarm clock goes off and I'm like, But in the back of my head, it's like, get on the elliptical. You have to. And it's not just to stay fit, It's to keep me mentally healthy.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of both worlds that it benefits me.
And so, now that sort of you talk about mental wellness now, sort of keeping your mental health in check. Was that something you had to do or struggle with during your fighting days, or have you sort of since then realized that that's another sort of level of wellness that you have to maintain?
Oh, mental health, it definitely helps. But it gives you that discipline to learn not to react, not to like pop off on someone. Like the anxiety, it exhausts you physically so you can sleep, so the brain shuts down. The body is an amazing tool once you learn how to use it. People don't realize that a lot of the fighters do have anxiety, PTSD, mental health. I mean, let's be real. Who in their right mind says, let me get in a lock cage with someone and just beat them to death?
Yeah.
There's got to be something behind it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, who does that in the first place? And then there is definitely probably no one or a very, very small number of people that does that and then doesn't have some sort of, mental aspect to it affecting them, or maybe like taking themselves out of it.
Hopefully, a lot of the fighters do what I've done and they sit and reflect on what the sport instills and how it releases that anger in the moment. So they're not looking for that street fight where, some of these fighters,
Yeah.
seeing them with the media, they have no hesitation to smack a camera, smack a person, and it's just dead wrong.
And that you just mentioned like reflection on what the sport does for you. Has that been since, your fighting days, or was that something you did between like fights in the midst of your career?
I have always kept to this day a training routine. I mean, I have to for my own mental health and
Yeah.
physical. So it's
And
really never stopped. It's always go, go, go.
yeah, and what does that routine, that regimen look like for you?
I mean, we're talking about a 4-hour window out of my day. We get a pre-workout supplement. We go for anywhere from a 4 to 7 mile run on the elliptical or outside if weather permits. Then we're isolating either back traps, legs, core, something of that nature. Then, if I'm lucky, do a little sparring, do a little stretching, and then it's the protein shake and shower.
Yeah. And like nowadays when you're sparring, do you think you've, like you said, kept that physical, health in of yours, or do you sort of feel at all that you've lost your touch a bit since fighting?
I don't think you ever lose it. I don't even want to say how many years at this point because I'll just age myself. But
You
with
spend
all the,
enough time.
right, so it's instilled in you. It's kind of like breathing. I was attacked in New York recently, and I was fortunate enough to know what I know, and it saved my life. It was just human instinct of what I was doing my whole life.
Yeah. And, what was that experience like for you other than like the moment that it happens and you realize like, okay, this is happening. What what was that scenario like? What sort of started going through your mind? Just sort of give us that scene if you don't mind.
I think as to where most people would just panic and, flail, I couldn't breathe because I was in a chokehold, so I couldn't say I got a deep breath of air.
Yeah.
I had whatever air I had in my lungs, but my brain went, okay, look around, see where the person's positioned, look for the feet, everything I was taught in training.
Mhm.
And luckily, after being lifted up by my hair by the guy, he put me
Oh,
down and I took a cheap shot, not gonna lie, but he's not having kids anytime soon.
yeah.
But I broke
Well,
free.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's great that you did that and very fortunate that, you could get through that.
I have to say
And
though, what amazed me about the whole thing, and it still stands in society today, everyone stands and watches. Where, all these men are watching.
so there were people around you that saw it and just didn't really help.
No, they stood there and watched.
Oh, that's awful.
Right, it just shows you where society's at and how crazy the sport has put things out there. that it's okay for a man to think he can just walk up behind me or anybody, put him in a chokehold.
Yeah.
Not cool.
And that, unfortunately it happens, but, you know, there are a lot of people trying to get that, problem solved, trying to sort of make the world a more peaceful place. What do you think there's anything we can do to sort of start teaching men, and I mean, at the same time, start teaching, young men and boys growing up what's okay and what's not okay to do to someone?
My whole thing is respect, proper ethics, social mores. You look at some of the kids, the teens, even the adults, and you just go, "What? Really?"
Yeah,
Society has lost its respect for everything, I feel. And if everyone just did one act of kindness per day, think of the change.
yeah,
It's as simple as holding a door for someone.
yeah. A lot of people, thankfully, are trying to do that, are trying to like bring joy, bring that kindness into the world. But a lot of people can sort of find be a little more pessimistic about that. Be like, well, my one thing, I'm just a person, is not going to have that big of an effect. What would you say to someone like that?
Your voice counts. Your voice matters. Your actions matter. You are someone. Don't be afraid to be you. I don't understand that. I want to use the word cowardness of people today.
Yeah,
Everyone is so tough behind a keyboard, yet in society, they're acting a fool.
yeah. And what you just described, can definitely be a very negative, a big downside to living in New York. It's a very big city, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of bad stuff as well. But growing up in New York, you also sort of lived life like sort of with your family rubbing elbows with other high profile families, the Kennedys, the Rockefellers. Being around such success like that, do you think that taught you anything about how to be successful or gave you sort of an image of what it was like to be successful?
As a young child, you don't really realize that you're quote unquote in a different world than other people. But I was fortunate enough that my parents instilled in me respect, just
Yeah,
every proper etiquette and all that. It's funny, people go crazy when they see celebrities. Everybody's a human being.
yeah,
Just treat everyone equally. It's very simple.
yeah.
I feel blessed, but now it's time for me to pay it forward.
Recently I was listening to an interview with a celebrity that I follow, and like the interviewer asked them basically like, do you find it hard to go out in public, like do normal things? Do you have a lot of people come up to you? And they were saying, thankfully when we go out, we occasionally get that, but it's not every time. We can still have a few moments, and we're actually a bit more surprised when someone does come up to us. It's like, oh, because they sort of kept themselves grounded, kept themselves humble, rather
That's
than having
exactly
this ego, this larger than life personality. And so,
right.
yeah, I guess what would you want to like sort of tell to anyone with a platform, anyone with a following, as to like how to keep yourself on grounded?
Don't ever forget where you came from. Just because you were born into something doesn't mean you put the footwork in. You need to lay your own foundation, stay humble, and build your legacy.
Mhm.
There was an instant, I must have popped off as a kid to someone when I was little. And I'll never forget, my mom looked at me and she goes, "You're not rich. We are." And it was like that check moment where it's like, whoa. So
Yeah,
it's important. I'm no better than the janitor down the street. I can pick up a broom and sweep. We are all the same at the end of the day.
and on top of, I listed it at the start, all the different sort of venues you have now. One of them is design. What sparked that interest in you? How do you use design? I mean, do you find yourself like trying to design for yourself, others? What's that whole side of your life like?
So I was born into the founding family of the garment district for New York. My uncle was David Dubinsky. So I always had different clothing. As you're young, you have no clue. As you start to get older, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is kind of cool. So it's great because I'm blessed enough to walk into my clothier shop and go, hey, let's pull this, let's mix that, let's try this. And I guess it's kind of like painting. You put these
Yeah.
things together and you wait to see the end result.
Yeah. So it's almost like an art form for you, I guess, using design or fashion.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hmm. You you recognize sort of I mean, yes, the importance of it, but you recognize that it has, a significance to it. It's not just, clothes are clothes, whatever, I'll throw something on. You see that they have a greater significance.
I mean, on a regular day, trust me, I'm a gym short, casual kind of
Yeah.
person. But when it's time to like be a little more spiffy per se, yeah, I do appreciate some
Yeah.
nice threads, especially ones that I know I've gotten to design and are one of a kind. I don't like to see myself in something that somebody else has or has worn. I want to be unique.
Mhm. And how do you go about, like, coming up with a design like that? Because even if you find inspiration somewhere, like you said, you wanna keep it new and unique, so it's unlike anything you've seen before. So where did those ideas come from? How do you come up with these designs?
So I get very lucky that my clothier goes to Europe every season. And we have this thing where we just know each other and how we think and work. And he brings back a bunch of fabrics and materials, and we sit down and we just go, okay, let's try this. Maybe that won't work. It's a hit or miss.
Mhm.
Fortunately, it's been more hits than misses.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's amazing. You walk in, it's just like, whoa. It still like gets me.
yeah. And so, last couple of questions here just to sort of wrap it up and go back to some big moments of your fighting career. Whether it's based off, memory, I don't know if you've gone back to watch your old fights at all. What do you think was the hardest fight of your career?
Now the past couple years I've tried to just block it out because I
Yeah.
feel guilty in a sense.
Mhm.
And I've hurt people. That's not cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound cocky or anything like that, but there was no
None.
I call it side
Yeah.
Stephanie because
Yeah.
women weren't doing, especially of my size, weren't into this. So for
Yeah.
me, it was go in, knock them out, flip them, do what I have to do, done. It was a
Yeah.
quick and easy.
Yeah. It was another day at the office.
That's exactly. It's like, okay, time to center, focus, hit them, out.
Yeah. And, I think it's great that even though it felt like it came that easier, it was, to you that easy. It's great that you remain so humble and so grounded through all of that.
I'm sure there'll come a day that someone's bigger and badder. They always
Yeah.
say that. But when the day comes, I'm sure I'll get the bug. Something will incite me and I'll be like, all right, let's do this.
Well, I mean, yeah, those are all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing, all these different parts of your life and your careers. Where can people find the limited social media you use if they want to follow you?
It's at Steph Mank, STEPHMANK.
Well, I'll leave a link to that down below. And thank you again so much for coming on and telling me a bit about your career.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.